Hello wonderful person, in this video we're going to return to an object we've talked about last year, the object known as Kepler-1625b, and we're going to discuss new updated discoveries about this unusual exomoon somewhere out there in our galaxy. Welcome to What the Math. Now, I've actually talked about this planet and this exomoon just over a year ago when it was originally discovered by David Kipping of the Columbia University. And you can actually check out the link for the video in the description, but I'm going to give you a brief summary of what we found. Oh, and by the way, a lot of the media has actually been publishing this story as if we just discovered this moon. That's not really true. We knew about this object for over a year now. But what actually is a clarification, and what essentially this paper that was just published is all about, is the follow-up study to the original discovery by pretty much the same people, David Kipping and Alex Tichy of the Columbia University. Now, they actually used Hubble telescope to try to pinpoint more similar observations from the similar object. They actually managed to get 40 hours of observation to try to discover this particular moon or potential exomoon by looking at it with Hubble. And luckily for us, this particular moon has actually been recently added to the new space engine, so we can maybe even see what it looks like if it's procedurally generated here. So this is the planet, Kepler-1625b, and the moon is at a distance of about 3 million kilometers, which is about maybe 8 times the distance of Earth to the moon. It's right here. It's known as Kepler-1625b1. It's a super Neptune, although here it kind of resembles Jupiter. So what exactly was rediscovered in a sense in this particular paper? First of all, the observations were once again not super conclusive. As a matter of fact, you can actually read the paper and look at some of the data, and it's just like actually mentioned by Scott Manley very recently, not super clear. Like, it's very difficult to actually see if there is a moon in here or if it's just a planet passing in front of a star. So there is actually a very interesting paper related to this that does a really good analysis of the math behind the initial observation. And if you read through it, or just the basic summary, they discovered that from all of the various methods they used, only one of the methods seemed to have indicated that there might have been an actual moon there. The other methods were kind of basically statistical anomalies. There was really nothing there. But I guess what is different about this particular study is that now they use another telescope and they kind of found something similar to the original observation. So we'll need to have follow-up studies before we can conclusively decide if there is a moon here or if it's just basically, I guess you could call it dirty data or mistakes in the data. If this is an actual moon and if this is actually the first exomoon we discovered, well, first of all, it needs a cool name. And I propose something from Star Wars, like Endor. And second of all, as I mentioned in the original video, this moon is actually in the habitable zone of its parent star. And either the moon or other moons, or maybe the planet it's orbiting, might potentially have liquid water. But as you can see, both of these objects are actually gas giants. And this is actually where it gets really interesting. Let's compare this to our solar system for a second. Here is Earth. The moon is somewhere there in the back, I think. There it is. Imagine if I were to multiply our planet Earth, its mass, that is, if I were to multiply its mass by 3,000. Boom. Okay. Now imagine I did the same to, oh, the moon is coming. Imagine I did the same to our moon. I made its mass about 3,000 times bigger. So this is kind of what those two objects are like. Basically, the central planet is about 9.5 masses of Jupiter, and the object orbiting it that we are calling exomoon is ridiculously large Neptune-like object. Might be not as massive as it is here, but still pretty massive. And in a sense, it's kind of very similar in terms of mass ratio to Earth and the moon. So it could actually technically be classified as the first binary planets. Not really an exomoon, but a planet with a smaller planet orbiting around it. Now, basically that's kind of down to semantics. Some people will say it's a moon, some people will say it's not. But what is important is that it is a very unusual object. And both of these objects are actually extremely unusual. We obviously don't have anything similar to them in our own solar system, because this planet itself is extremely massive, extremely large, but yet very close to the star that's actually very similar to our sun, except for one little thing. This star is at its sort of last few 100 million or maybe billion years of life. It's about 10 billion years old. It's about 5.5 billion years older than our own sun. And because of this, it's probably way hotter than our sun. And it's going to turn into a red giant relatively soon in astronomical terms. At the same time, because this star is actually kind of similar to our sun, it's important to understand how these planets evolved and how they actually were able to move so close to the sun itself. Because we normally don't expect gas giants to be that close. And so maybe, just maybe, these are some unusual, weird looking planets that have very strange composition on them as well. And if these two objects actually exist as you see them here, we think that the moon itself was probably created in a very similar fashion that Jupiter got its moons. Basically, there used to be a very large ring around this planet, and some parts of the ring coalesced into this object that we have here, Kepler-1625b, that I'm going to unofficially refer to as Andor from now on. But I guess it's still very inconclusive. As a matter of fact, there's only 3 papers in total published about this object, and we need to have more follow-up studies and more math analysis before we can conclusively say whether this here is a moon, a binary planet, or just a kind of an error in the data. Now, as of now, at least according to the other paper, this is just an error. This thing does not exist. But because of the Hubble observation and because of the new data that came from the Columbia University, we will hopefully have some follow-up studies that will actually tell us what is actually happening here and what we're seeing. And just to add something to this, the 2 main reasons the scientists behind this paper believe this is the moon is because they also actually observed 2 strange anomalies in the data. In one of the observations, they noticed that the planet actually didn't really arrive at its location when it was supposed to. In other words, as if something was actually pulling on the planet, like for example a very large, very massive moon that it might have. And in the second observation, they saw something else briefly covering the star, and that something may have been that moon. Now, this data definitely has to be reanalyzed very carefully, but if they're right, then, like I said, this is Andor. There's no discussion, this has to be Andor. Anyway, I guess they'll have to decide on the name, but I honestly think it's a great name. So that's kind of all we know about 1625b. And if you want to know a little bit more detail about it, check out the video I made last year known as First Exomoon Discovered, and the video is actually in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you learned something about this object, and now you know a little bit more about what's going on and what media kind of got a little bit wrong. And also hopefully now you understand what may actually exist out there about 8,000 light years away from our planet. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you still haven't. Share this video with someone who loves watching space videos and wants to learn more about space, and maybe even consider supporting this channel on Patreon. Space out, and as always, bye bye.